Hi, everybody. I'm Raina Nielsen from Blue Cypress Books. I want to thank everybody for watching up Book Banter again this evening. Tonight, I will be talking to MJ Fievre. Her books she has dozens of books, and they are amazing nonfiction books for mostly for kids and teens. And I have Black and Resilient here with me this evening, which is our most recent book for our young adults. This is an amazing interactive book for Black boys who uh, writing is an amazing way to work through life, and this is an amazing book to help them do that. She is also the author of the Badass Black Girl series, which we are definitely going to talk about this evening. So if you have any questions at any point throughout the event, please type them in the comments and we will answer them for you during the event. And without further ado, I'm going to click this button and welcome MJ into the event. Hi there.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining me. First of all, I want to say that your entire canon of books has something like I'm interested in a little bit of everything. Um, you have the Badass Black Girl series and this newest one, Black and Resilient, which is for more Black teen boys. And then you have books for younger kids too. So tell me a little bit about what you write.
Well, I started writing very, very early. I was still in the Caribbean when I started. I'm originally from Haiti, and I actually started with fiction. So in my teenage years, I published a few fiction books. And I just knew that I wanted to continue writing until my last days. So when I moved to the United States, I was 21. I decided to do to become a quote unquote real writer by actually studying the craft, because everything I had been doing was just instinctual, because I was an avid reader. So I wanted to be able to learn the craft. So I attended a creative writing program in South Florida at Florida International University. And when I started thinking about the kind of books that I wanted to keep on writing, a little bit after the earthquake in Haiti, I had this kind of moment, introspective moment, where I felt that, yeah, I wanted to entertain people still, but fiction was not doing it for me anymore at that time. I'm not saying that I don't love fiction anymore, but I needed something more. So I started focusing on how I could help um, kids, particularly teenagers, because that tragedy in Haiti brought me back to my life in Haiti. And I remembered how I struggled with a sense of real identity, of just being able to find a book that was written really for me. Because although I had access to great books, um, I wasn't necessarily the audience for those books when I was growing up. So I wanted to be able to help kids who had questions such as, how do I deal with racism? Or how do I find my purpose in the world? So first, I studied a little bit with poetry, because there were other themes like depression that I wanted to talk about. And I felt that poetry was the best way to deal with those topics. And then I decided to go into nonfiction and help kids, particularly my students, because I became a teacher, and I realized that kids today have the exact same questions that I did when I was their age. So that's how it all started. I first studied a series for girls, Badass Black Girl,
Mhm.
with the spin-offs, Resilient Black Girl, Empowered Black Girl. Then parents and librarians started asking me, what about the boys? You teach boys too. They're part of your club. Um, what are you gonna do? So I started working on a series for boys. So the first book is Black and Resilient, and very soon, um, Walk Boldly is going to be available in stores as well.
Yeah, is that the summer? I remember I looked it up, but it was like June or July. Yeah.
It's in June, and the only reason I remember is because it's my sister's birthday on June
Oh,
14th, and that's when the book comes out.
awesome. Yeah, boys are boys are a little hard to find books for, and I know that's in a way a stereotype, but it's harder to get their foot in the door. That's, I think, what it is, and that is unfortunate. But once you get them into the bookstore, basically, I get them in the door, then they want something that speaks to them.
Yes.
Like, and I feel like a lot of times they come into a bookstore, and I don't know exactly where this comes from, but boys walk into bookstores if they are in there and they're like, well, this is not for me. Like, how
Mhm.
do I even, it's like overwhelming. How do I even find something? You
I know
know,
it's a stereotype, but you know what they say about stereotypes is that they are true. They're just not 100% true, but they are, right? And it's true. I mean, I had to have consultants, and my most important consultants for my books were my nephews, because
yes,
two of them are right around that age that I'm focusing on, and I wanted to know what it was that would be interesting to them. And they are more difficult than girls, that's for sure. They need the visuals, and they want spurts of information as opposed to long paragraphs. They want to know from the get-go why they're reading this chapter, what
yes.
this chapter is going to do. Girls are so much easier. They're like they'll go with the flow. Boys, it's like, get to the point, tell me what the point is, before I give you a minute of my time.
It really is. Yeah, like it's like the back of the book is so much more important with the boy. You gotta those couple of paragraphs has got to be okay. Here's my purpose. This is what it's, this is the reason. I think starting with this where it's sort of interactive with that, like there are action items in here,
Yes.
which I think was a great idea when speaking to boys too, because there's a ton of information where you're just sort of reading and you're like, okay, and then there's like, and here's a thing,
Hmm.
and yeah, boys need that like get up and go, that action item a lot of times, when girls are just like, I'm good,
You
okay,
know, I still managed to give the girls action items too, because I think it was important for me, a girl who had to figure out so many things for
Mhm.
herself. So, the first thing, I mean, I went to Catholic school most of my life, and one thing I always asked my teachers, the nuns, was, okay, so what's the plan for this week? You know, you go. I would go to church, and there would be a beautiful sermon, and then I leave, and I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this information. And
Right.
same thing with some classes that I was taking, literature classes. Um, you would learn about all those famous writers from 19th century France, or um, Haitian writers, and sometimes they would put them in context. But even when they were in context, you're like, okay, how does that apply to my life? How can I use what they've done and do something with myself,
Mhm.
and write a little bit and discover what I want to be? So I always had those conversations. I was the teacher's pet, the one who stays after class and bothers people during. Yes, yes,
I
thank you.
know.
During recess, I would have those long conversations with teachers about, okay, so what's the action item? And even at work now, I'm known as the action item person. It's always like, okay, good meeting. So, who's doing what? What's the list for next week? So I wanted to be able to give the boys and give the girls specific things that they can do. So here's the information, here's the context, this is why this information is important, and this is how you can apply it to your life. If we're talking about a trailblazer, for instance,
Mhm.
those wonderful Black individuals who had success in science, in business, in politics, how is that relatable to a kid? What can they do with this information? So I break it down for them. this is what their success means to you, and this is what you can do. And if you want a goal for this week, here's the goal. Or here's an idea for a goal, and you can adapt it and make it your own.
Uh, okay, I lost you there for a second, but you're back.
Yes.
So okay. Okay. So I missed the last little bit of what you said, but we were talking about, you were saying action items and like giving them goals, like what is this now that I can do to, yeah, to make the, the trailblazers. How does that? But yes. So can you still hear me?
I
Okay.
can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know if you're freezing, if I'm freezing, it's the internet. One of
It's
us
the
is.
internet. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Ugh. Um, so I also wanted to talk to you too about like the badass black girl, like sort of phenomenon. Like now there's a website and a vlog and multiple books in that series. Um, you got you kind of mentioned how you got that idea just from wanting to give them something to so they could see themselves
Yes.
and like help themselves find their place in the world. But how did it become like all of this that we have now?
I mean, I'm I'm on a roll. I found my passion. I found my mission. Um, that event that I mentioned, the earthquake in Haiti, was life changing to me. Like, it was a complete shift. I wasn't in Haiti when it happened. I was in the U.S., and I'm one of those who had to go through the despair, waiting to hear whether my family was okay, and then getting the news bit by bit, right? Learning about people who did not make it, learning about what was going on, in terms of humanitarian aids when they were finally able to send some help to Haiti. And as soon as I could travel, I did. So I went to the Dominican Republic, and from there I drove to Haiti, and I was able to spend 2 weeks working as an interpreter there, helping the doctors who had traveled from overseas to help communicate with people. And I mean, I barely recognized the place. I spent half my life in Haiti. I left when I was 21. So
Mhm.
my formative years were in Haiti. And I just wanted to do something meaningful with my writing. As I mentioned before, I love fiction, and I was able to do a lot with my fiction, visiting the schools in Haiti, teaching kids about writing, expressing themselves. But I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted to make an impact. So I started working as soon as I got home. Poetry, plays, and later I started thinking about something that is more defined, with specific goals for the reader. So, growing up in Haiti, I it wasn't an easy place to be. Haiti can be very beautiful, but everything has two sides, right? So
Mhm.
there are all those things you hear about Haiti, the misery, the poverty. But there's also I mean, it's so luscious there, and the people are so welcoming and funny, and they think outside the box. So it's such a great place, but it's not an easy place. I had to deal with, weeks without electricity, and still having to go to school and um, make the grade. I
Mhm.
had to figure out what I was going to do in career wise, because in Haiti it's very limited. You're either a doctor, a teacher, an engineer, an architect, or a nurse. There are some other professions, but they're not necessarily viable, right? Of
Right.
course, we can be an entrepreneur, but not everyone is privileged enough to be able to be. So I I I had a lot of experience with Haiti, and what is endemic to Haiti. But also, I came from a family that was very dysfunctional. Who isn't, right? But mine
Right.
was particularly violent. So I had to learn how to be resilient. And I decided to use everything that I had learned about surviving emotionally,
Hmm.
because surviving physically is one thing, emotionally is something else. So I talk about both. So I wanted to be very deliberate about how I approach that. Our kids these days are going through so much. Even before the pandemic, of course made it worse for everyone. A lot is going on emotionally. Kids are trying to understand how they're supposed to be in a world that is totally unstable. So
Hmm.
I wanted to help my readers with that. How do you find it in yourself to be strong when your parents are fighting all the time? How do you find it in yourself to believe that you're going to succeed when society keeps telling you that you're less than, you're not as smart as your peers, you're not going to make it? When people see you, they get scared because there's this idea that you're black, you're violent, you're black, you're probably not um very profession oriented, right? So
Hmm.
all those stereotypes that stick to you and that people um carry with them when they see you, and that you carry in yourself when you think about yourself. I wanted to be able to help people with that because I was able to overcome that. And I wanted to share what I had learned.
This that teenage those teenage years are so you can watch that transition happen from being a younger kid, and and this happens with everybody, but like being happy or whatever, and just sort of things are going along, and somewhere in those teen years you can observe the real world hit you, right? You start to realize the situation you're really in, or your prospects, or the way people really see you, right? You're a kid, and then at some point this starts, or the way you perceive people seeing you, and there's all these things. And my son is 15, so like I've been observing this, him and his peers and kids he goes to school with and things, just sort of watching them get older, and you see that. And I there are a few resources from somebody who's not close enough to like really get in there with them,
Mhm.
or see them every day. I'm a parent. I'm over here. Like I pick them up, drop them off. I see certain people, but like I'm not a teacher in there in the classroom. Um, and book selling is my way into there. And books like yours are such an amazing like gateway to just, I mean, I can just lay this out and walk away. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I can't force anything to happen, but books like yours open doorways for people, and for kids that might not have a lot of other people looking out for them, or
Yeah.
opportunities to just kind of like flip through a book that's telling them you've got all this potential, and here's how you can actually like tap into it.
Right. And being the parent of a teenager is tricky, yes, because they're in this weird position where they need you, but they don't want to show it. And at the same time, they're coming to the realization that a lot of what is wrong with the world is because of the adults. So they're not really sure that they should even trust us to do
Hmm.
anything. So they're leaving that naivete from their younger years behind and trying to figure out who they are and who they can be without you. So, yeah, books for sure are the best gateway. And what I've tried to do is, while I was writing the books in the series, is to remember that I have to gain their trust, because after all, I'm still an adult, talking to them. I didn't want to be in the position where I'm this all knowing person and you just have to receive the information. I really wanted the books to be interactive so that they they still feel that they have agency, that okay, here's someone who's gone through some hardship. Those are the lessons that she's sharing. For the boys, she took the time to actually talk to other boys, talk to successful men, so she could really get a picture even larger than just talking to her students, right? I wanted them to get all this and to feel that, okay, so she's not telling me 100% what to do. She's telling me what she's been through, what other people have been through, trailblazers, successful Black individuals like me. And she's giving me a map and I can make it my own. So that was really important to me, because I don't like the idea of talking down to kids, because I remember being a kid and thinking that so many of the adults around me had no idea what they were doing, and I certainly didn't want them to come and try to sell me anything.
Right. Yeah, and even when you look around and they do seem to have their things together, their things aren't my things.
Right.
And I'm right. So I get that you got that, but like you don't really understand me anyway. What I'm doing is different, right? I'm doing is 25 years later. You don't know, that's I get a lot of that. Old people, right?
Mhm.
Like I just so there's no way I could relate because it's been so long and whatever. You just don't know what they're talking about. Like
Right.
okay, right? And to a very a degree that's true. I don't know. Some things are sort of universal, but then like how it's being dealt with today, what the kids are saying in class today
Hmm.
might be the same things they said in class, 20, 30
Right.
years ago. So like I don't. And then tapping into that aspect too, like was that a part of it that you thought about? Because you were talking about relating to, remembering when you were a teenager, when you were younger, but then also like there's been time passed. So what did you, getting what the kids are listening to these days?
So I try to really keep track of what's going on. Having nephews and nieces and doing so many presentations here and there, talking to kids, going to libraries and classrooms and interacting, I really try to understand what their world is today. I know technology has changed everything. I'm not a native of technology. I had my first computer when I was 13, which is unthinkable for many of them. The generation today didn't have cassettes, right? They didn't have
Oh yeah.
CDs, and those things feel so current to me. I still have all my CDs, all my old cassettes from high school. So I try to see what's different. I mean, I know about bullying. Bullying remains bullying. It's just that the format has changed, right? Because now everybody's on social media. And I think that social media has brought a layer of meanness that didn't exist before, because it's so easy now to just hide somewhere and bother someone else, right? So I try to take all this into consideration. I think what has made me particularly successful, in terms of taking an approach that works for kids today, is that I listen to kids a lot,
Mhm.
which is something that a lot of adults don't do. This idea that they know better. Well, it might be that you have more experience, but you don't know better than I do about my own life and my own feelings, right? If I'm a kid. So listening to kids and asking them for feedback has always been so important to me. I will admit that it's easier because I'm the auntie, right? I'm not the mother. So it's easier to come and talk to me. And it feels safer to answer questions when it comes from me than from a mom. And as a teacher too, it's like, oh, she's that cool teacher. I'll ask her,
Yeah.
and I'll be frank, right? So, listening has been important for me to understand. So many things have changed. The very idea of identity. When you ask me as a teenager, I mean, the concept of identity was so limited. It's like it had to do with, of course, what country you're from. Your gender identity was either this or that. Now, in all those concepts are so large. It's like a
Yes.
lot to unpack, and adults have to understand that the world is changing. It's changing fast, and the kids are caught in the middle where they're trying to understand who they are, who they're supposed to be. Um, if if they're supposed to have faith, if they're supposed to be just 100% science and no faith, they're trying to understand all that. Of course, their parents influence them a lot, their upbringing, but a lot of what they're becoming has nothing to do with what's happening at home, because um, when I was a kid, you get home and you're home. Now you get home and the computer opens up a portal to something totally different than what might be happening at home. So we have to take that into consideration, that kids are forging their own lives, and we need, as parents, as educators, we need to keep up with that.
That is absolutely true. And the same way for adults too. I mean, I get home and I've got this computer, there's 7 tabs open. I can go do learn, be entertained, you know, connect with whoever I want to. And we didn't, I mean, I didn't have that growing up either. And I think that's one of the reasons books are so special to me. And I was listening to a podcast that you did earlier, and you said that you read like 500 and some books one one
Yes.
year. So I
I
wonder if books serve the same purpose, a similar purpose for you back when you were younger, before we had like computers and the internet to just take us
I
away.
mean, I can't I can't express how much I love books. I mean, I remember I was really young when someone said, when you think about it, books have everything you need in terms of building your mind. You can learn about um, different countries, you can learn about different faiths, you can learn about how to be human, you can learn how to be an animal. It's like so many things. And I'm really lucky that I had a family that really encouraged people to read. My dad was a teacher. My mom was always reading, mostly before going to bed. And my sister, um, Patricia, I have three sisters. The one closest to me, of course, because of our age, we spent a lot of time together. She was always reading, and she's the one who really introduced me to books. And I mean, it's a world that is so delightful because you go at your own pace. It's a personal experience because you're reading the book and it's just you and what's going on in the book. And the expression getting lost in a book is so true. I feel like I'm emerging whenever I'm done with a chapter, or if I get interrupted, or if I'm done with a book. I still read until now. I do this thing where I will read a book. I still read. Um I have to hold the book,
Yes.
but it's sometimes just because I cannot give it up. I'll have the same book on audio as well, so that I can keep reading in the car, and then I when I get back home, I can continue with the book. So I'll do whatever it takes to finish a story, to finish a good self-help book, to finish a good poetry book. It's my time and I'm building my mind. I'm just getting away from my problems, from the chaos of the world. It's such a great experience.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. It's like I've been reading, since I can remember, like always been a book lover. And I have yet to do that with the audiobook and the physical book, the same book. I've heard a couple of people now that do that, where you're reading the physical book and then you have the audio like in your car or something. And I haven't done that with the same book. I'm always in the middle of two. I have a physical book like right next to my bed, and then I have my audiobook I listen to mostly, in the car. But I haven't done it where it's the same one yet.
It's great. I just read Verity by I know her first name is Colleen Hoover. Colleen
Hoover,
Hoover.
yes.
And now I want to go see the Agatha Christie movie. I had read the book as a kid. I'm rereading Death on the Nile,
Mm-hmm.
just so that I can watch the movie without ruining the book.
Yes. I
So
have to do that. I have to read the book before I see the movie or TV show. Excuse me. If I do it the other way around, a lot of times I won't get to the book. Like I feel like I know the ending if
right.
I've watched the movie first. So I have to read the book first. There's a couple of movies like I haven't watched yet because I'm like, I haven't gotten to the book. I don't want to. I just years go by. I don't. I don't get to it yet.
I'm with you though. It's like the book first, then the
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. Exactly. So growing up, what were some of your favorite books?
I Well, if you know anything about Haiti, we have two national languages, so French and Creole. Um, Unfortunately, Creole was very stigmatized when I was growing up. It was, oh, this bastard language that you're not supposed to speak at home or at school, which was really a way to people to keep their power, right? Because
Mhm.
99% of the population speaks Creole, 1% speaks Creole and French. So it was like French, 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 because um, Haiti is very classist in that way. So a lot of the books that I read were in French because we did not have many options in Creole. Maybe a few poets that were defenders of the Creole language. So books were imported mostly from Canada and from Europe, from some of the French Antilles, and their books also were um, the writers were Caribbean, but they mostly came from France. They were
Mm.
French editors. So my first few years were really non-Haitian in terms of reading because I didn't have access to anything other than the classics, the Haitian classics. So if you were not learning about them at school, you were not reading about them, and they were older, right? They were books that I ended up enjoying maybe my last few years of high school because it was, for me, it was a bunch of old people. So I read teenage books from francophone, other francophone countries.
Mm.
So there was this particular series called Le Club des Sept. It was those seven kids who were detectives trying to solve different crimes. There was the Adventures of Fantomette. Fantomette was a female um, superhero. Not she didn't have any superpowers. She was mostly like Batman. She was human with she was clever and very athletic, and she wore a face cover. So those books will stay with me forever because they showed that kids had intelligence, they had agency, they could just solve crimes and be themselves, create a world for themselves, choose their friends, and just be happy doing what they're enjoying, which is solving mysteries. Um, when I when I got to high school, I started reading things that were a little bit more serious. So that's when I really got into Haitian literature. And if you look at Haitian literature as taught in high school, it's really what they call activist writing, where it's all about what can you do to improve your country, and what is the meaning of being Haitian, what is your role in the world. So I read a lot of classics again, and then I discovered some modern writers who were writing horror and fantasy, and I'm like, what?
Mm,
I didn't know that was possible. So Gary Victor was very important to me as a writer because I was really interested in horror and fantasy, and that's what he wrote. And of course, it was inspired by Haitian lore, which you won't find anywhere else. And there was also Margaret Papillon. She was writing about very female. She was writing directly to my female sensitivity. What it means to be female in the world. A lot of her stories explore that, although she has books on other topic, but most of her main characters are female, and they're grappling with issues that are very real in Haiti. So those two authors are really the ones that gave me an appreciation for modern Haitian literature. And in the early 2000s, that's when there was an explosion of books in Haiti because it became easier to print than it was in the past. So we have all those people who started publishing more and more. So the choices were really, um, I mean, so many books to choose from. So those two authors in particular in Haiti, really it changed the way I approached Haitian literature. And
mm,
later, right before I moved to the United States, I discovered Edwidge Danticat, of course, internationally known. And I'm like, oh my God, she's from Haiti, and um, I'm I'm reading about her about I'm reading her books, and I'm rediscovering Haiti. I'm seeing the Haiti I know through the eyes of someone else, and it was really interesting to me to see uh her approach to joy, to suffering, to beauty, and um everything that can be perverted right in the world, and the duality that she's always conscious of really changed the way I saw the two sides of the coins. Right, you tend to
mhm.
just focus on one, but when you find authors who are able to really present things as a whole, not focus on only what's beautiful or what's ugly, but showing you everything as Edwidge Antica does, it really changes you as a writer, but also as a person just looking at the world.
Yeah, and it feels like Haiti is a place for sure. New Orleans is, I've found to be a place where it does. It has all these like beautiful, amazing things that you can't find other places. It's just so unique alongside like things that are the exact opposite. You're like, I need to be running in the other direction from this. But like also this is literally 2 blocks away, which is beautiful or incredibly culturally unique. And yeah, living in this, how do you deal with that on a daily basis? And of course, as we get older, we realize like things are like that. Like you have one coworker you love, and one coworker you're like, why are we doing this today? And then you're like, but this is where we live. Like, how do you figure out like how to deal with that, and then be okay with who you are in space with both of these things?
I
As
mean,
that's difficult as an adult, let
right.
alone
I mean, it's a
teenager.
lifelong process, right? And I think
For
that
sure.
journaling and introspection really help you get there, because that's the sign, that's the ultimate sign of maturity, when you realize that not everything is white and not everything is black, that there is a gray area, but at the same time, when it comes to values and to things that you really believe in, then you need to leave the gray area and kind of focus yourself somewhere, right? Anchor yourself somewhere. So it's a delicate balance between when do I give someone the benefit of the doubt? When do I meet someone halfway if they're totally different than me? But where do I stand so that I'm still strong in what I believe and I still honor my values? So I encourage people to do a lot of introspection, and you'll see that all of my books have journal prompts. You cannot actually write in the books, but you I encourage readers to have like a companion journal, blank journal that they can use, because I give them a lot of activities, a lot of journal prompts that really guide them to answer those questions, because it's easy to get lost in the world. I mean, if you have to meet everyone halfway, it becomes dangerous when they have a very dark agenda, for instance. But at the same time, you want to be open to other people's opinions. You want to be able to walk in their shoes to see where they come from, because people might think totally differently than you do, and they don't have an agenda. It's just that their preoccupations are different, their life is different. Maybe there's been abuse in the past, maybe they've been deceived in the past. You don't know where people come from, so you do want to listen to them, but at the same time you want to be strong in what defines you, in what makes you you. And it's a battle that never ends. I mean, it's not like, oh, let's do some journaling and then you figure out the world. It's just that you get better at figuring out the world. The new questions will arise, but you will have answered many questions at that point, so that you're closer to being authentic, to being who you really are, who you're supposed to be, and just carry out your life mission.
When you make a really good point too, the more you know who you are and what your moral compass is, what you believe in, it's easier to deal with those new situations that arise, because you already, you know, pretty much, if you know 90% how you feel, and then there's this new situation, you can navigate that 10% a lot easier than if the percentages were reversed, for
For
example.
sure. And the reason why I encourage everyone to really get to know themselves is because it's easier when you know yourself before trouble starts, right? So I encourage people to grab self empowerment books before they need the empowerment. When even when everything is just going well, and I mean, you're lucky and things are just smooth sailing, right? That's when you really want to dig deep, because you want to have a strong foundation for when things stop going the way. When everything goes south, then you have um resources, you have tools that you can use to get you out of that situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, do you have any books for adults in your plan along the lines of the Badass Black Girl and the Black and Resilient? Those, you know, or if not, do you recommend some, like you're mentioning, for people to
Well,
continue?
Well, the funny thing is that a lot of adults actually write to me and tell me, "I read your book." They buy it for their kids and they end up reading the book themselves. So, really, I think that Badass Black Girl can be read up to 99, right? No matter what age you are, if you're over 13, absolutely with the book. I recently collaborated with author Becca Anderson for a new book called The Book of Awesome Black Women. Becca is the author of the Awesome series, so she has the Book of Awesome Women, and we collaborated for the Black women version. And I think that it's although it's still technically a young adult books, because that's always been my main audience. Many of our beta readers were adults and they just loved it, because as usual we present the information in a way that is actionable, where you're really getting to know those black women, not just superficially, but you can use what they've done as inspiration for your own life. And of course, you don't have to be a black person yourself to learn from them. I think that that's one thing that we're still trying to make people understand, that you don't have to be a Black person to read a book by a Black author about Black matters, because um, we're all part of the same world and we need to understand each other. And you might not be Black yourself, but you have a Black friend and they're part of your world. So, yeah.
Yes. That seems like, to us that is like obviously, but yeah, those moments when someone comes into the bookstore and I know they're looking for something that looks exactly like them, like they're describing it, I'm like, okay, how can I, like, where can I fit in some of that gray area we were talking about earlier? Like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like also try this one and this one, just hear me out, right? And then that moment when they come back and they go, oh yeah, I loved The Vanishing Half, and I'm like, you did, didn't you? You did. Okay, I got you now, right? I got you a little bit. What have I got? What can I, where can we go with this, right? And so much of it is exactly that. It's just going like this preconceived notion again that like, oh well, I wouldn't understand it, so I wouldn't enjoy it. Or
Right.
and I'm like, that to me, it's the opposite. Oh, I don't know everything about it already. So let me learn something. Let me see what I can learn from this experience. And fiction is a great gateway for that. And like you're talking about, like memoir biography type things are a great way for that, because okay, here's a Black woman, you've seen her on TV, you just, here's your gateway. Right now, here's her memoir. And you wouldn't have anything in common with a movie star anyway. What difference does it make? Start here, and then you realize, oh, that was entertaining, or there's this thing I didn't know about that issue that I'd never considered, and then like, all right, here we go. Where are we going from here? And I love that. So this book, Awesome Black Woman, to me sounds a little bit like that, where I could, as a bookseller, use
Uh-huh.
it as this gateway where like, all right, well, give this a shot. See what you think. And then once you come back and tell me, oh, that was entertaining. Okay, now I got you. Like, where can we go from here? And yes, I'm excited about that book.
In terms of books that I recommend, I want to think about books that I read maybe in the past year. One book that really stayed with me is oh well, anything by Nnedi Okorafor, I will recommend. She writes fantasy, and she's just amazing. She's a Nigerian American writer. She writes fantasy, science fiction. She has books for kids, books for adults. So if you're looking for a book that really just gives you a good time, remote control is the one that I read most recently. It's for young adults, but definitely anyone can enjoy that.
Yeah, that's definitely a crossover book for sure. And her books are relatively short. I mean, sometimes, especially when you say fantasy, you're thinking like this. Her books aren't like that. So that is another thing that makes them great, like easy reads for somebody who is a big reader, but also a nice like introduction to something a little different, maybe for somebody who isn't.
For sure. And speaking of short books, and there's another book that I've enjoyed, My Sister, the Serial Killer. I could not put it down. So that's another one. The author is Oyin Khan Braithwaite, and she's just amazing.
That book is so good, and I love, like, my pitch line. Here's my pitch line. So you already know the twist, because it's right in the title. So
Right.
you don't have to, like, we know what happens. Also, I think that book is much more of a family drama than it is like a thriller serial killer book, really.
Yes.
And that catches people off guard. It caught me off guard. I mean, I thought I was getting into, sort of more of a mystery thriller type of situation. And then you get even like a chapter or so in, you're like, okay, this is a sister family thing, and then you have a sister, so I have a sister, and then I'm all of a sudden like, wait a minute, what would I do?
Right.
Like, what
That's
if she called me up and she said blah blah blah? I was like, I mean, I would go, but like, then what?
right.
Right? It didn't
How
put that
far are
whole
you willing to go for family, right?
exactly, exactly. So
Another book that I really loved is Queenie by Candice Cody Williams.
yes.
Um, she's from the Caribbean, so the connection was right there. And I just loved it. It's about a biracial relationship, but of course, it's always more than just about that. It's about the main character trying to figure out her place in the world and what makes her tick. Um, and it's another book that I would definitely recommend if you're looking for a great fiction read.
Well, those are three amazing recommendations. Queenie is actually over here in my much too large to show you TBR, uh, double stacked. I was going through it a couple of days ago and pulling out, some books, and I literally took that one and I was like, gosh, I need to read this, and moved it to the top. So it's like now just like right at the top. I can see it from here. And I'm like, yep, I need to get now. You recommended it. That's gonna push it over the edge, and I'll get
Oh
to
my God, it was so embarrassing. I actually met the author and I had a total starstruck moment, which never happens. And I just couldn't put a sentence together, and it was all so awkward. She was very kind and smiled and talked to me, but I was a total fool because I loved the book so much.
Have you read Patsy? The author of that is Nicole Dennis Ben, Benn. And I had a moment like that with her. I didn't know that she was going to be at this event. It wasn't for her book or anything. And I was actually selling books for something else. And her wife actually came in to the little like shop that I had. And I was selling this, and she's like, "Oh, I see that you have Patsy over there." And I thought she wanted to buy it. And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." She's like, "Well, do you mind like if my wife signed it?" And I'm like, "Wait a what?" Like that's a weird because she didn't say. She's like, "Well, yeah, she wrote it." I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's here?" She's like, "Yeah, but she didn't want to come in and bug you." I'm like, "Please, please come in and bug me. Please come in and bug me." Right? But then she's there. I'm like, "I loved your book." Like, I was like, "Yes, please come be in front of me." And then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, I got nothing. Thank you." So there's
I
it.
was
You have it.
lucky enough. I was lucky enough to meet the author at the Miami Book Fair, and yeah, it's. I mean, so many amazing writers out there, and I'm so thankful that there's a place like Blue Cypress where people can actually go and get all those amazing books. Thank you for what you do for promoting literature, for being there for those authors, and for pushing the books.
Oh, well, you know what? It's a team effort. You and I working together. You keep writing them, and I'll keep selling them. Well, I want to thank you so much, MJ, for joining me for Book Banter this evening. It's been a lot of fun talking to you.
It was so fun to get to know you a little better, and I loved it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And everyone who is watching, I see you out there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and everybody have a very good night.